Okay, now welcome back to the Cinema of Transformation. This is the last movie we're going to be looking at in our series here, and this is Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. Wow, a major epic movie. It has transcended the movie genre and is really considered a piece of art beyond just a movie. But it is a movie and it is a story, and there's a lot of transformation happening. This is really taking a look at the big questions, the big issues, the biggest of the big. What is life? What are we doing? Why are we here? Where are we going? Those kinds of things. And in these major transitions of the whole entire life cycle, because what we have is, birth, life, and death. So we're going to talk about reproduction and some of the imagery and symbolism that is shown throughout the film. And a lot of time is spent eating. Of course, that's a very necessary thing to do for life. We have to eat. We have to sleep. There's also a lot of sleeping, too. Maybe you can point those out. And we're going to track this eating and see how it evolves, how it changes, how it goes from one thing to another thing throughout. Now, we're not really going to talk about evolution in the sense that as a species origin, that we're going to talk about evolution versus creationism or something like that, Darwinism or whatever you want to call it. We're really talking about growth and development. However, we see that these major stages of growth for the proto-humans and the human beings in the movie seem to be catalyzed or brought about by this intervention from some other intelligence. So lots to think about, and we'll get into that with what it might mean to realize that we're not alone in the universe. And then the greatest transition of all in life is death. This is one of the greatest topics, considerations. People have been questioning, wondering, guessing, sometimes thinking they know about what death is, what lies beyond. Do we come back? Is it eternity in some positive or negative place? But it seems to be an inevitability. And with the death process, we will talk about natural death, but there's a lot of killing in 2001. So this is death brought about consciously and deliberately, but it's still death. So birth, life, and death. That's what we're really going to talk about, these main topics in the movie 2001 from 1968, Stanley Kubrick's masterpiece. Now, it was based on a short story called The Sentinel by Arthur C. Clarke. He's a science fiction writer. And they spent a lot of time going through the movie process of writing it because The Sentinel is very, very short. As a matter of fact, you're going to read it this week. And it's just the part where they're on the moon and they uncover the monolith. In the book, it's not a black slab. It's actually a crystal pyramid. But either way, it's still something that was put there by somebody else a long time ago, buried, waiting for us, Earthlings, to evolve to the point to where we can actually make it to the moon and find the darn thing. Whereas if we found it hundreds of years before, we may not know what to do with it or anything like that, or we wouldn't have evolved to that point. And that's something we're going to talk about. And since they spent so much time on it, it obviously changed dramatically from a short story that was only a few pages to a 2.5-hour movie. So Clarke renovelized it. He came out with the book after the movie. And there's even way more information in it about space travel and the machinery and some of the characters' names and other things that we don't really get to in the movie. Because the movie is really thin in dialogue. I mean, it's a lot of quiet time. It's very meditative in a sense, just like a piece of art in a museum where you would look at it and just go, I wonder what that means, or just experience it in your presence. Okay, it's also based partially on Homer's Odyssey. It's called A Space Odyssey, and there's a reason for that. Some of the parallels include like Odysseus in the Odyssey with David Bowman and his Discovery ship. Well, he lost his ship, lost his crew, had to battle a one-eyed monster. In the Odyssey, that was Cyclops, and in the film, it's Hal, the computer. It is kind of a modern take on that, but it's wow. And you can look at these movie posters here. It's this epic drama of adventure and exploration. This is during the space age, this late 60s. It was a year before the lunar landing, but everybody was interested and excited about what was happening. I was a young kid at the time, but wow, it was, space stuff everywhere. It was great. And there's a lot of hardware and space things. This is, really advanced as far as special effects of its day. Really took it to another level. But we can see in this other movie poster, The Ultimate Trip. And what happened is there's a sequence in the Stargate where Bowman, in his pod, he goes through dimensions and bright colors and tunnels and all kinds of really abstract imagery going through. And apparently this is the late 60s, and some of the hippies figured out that, well, if at a certain point in the movie you time out your acid trip, like knowing when to drop it, by the time it gets to this scene, you have really quite a psychedelic experience with that. So I'm sure very much unintended by Kubrick in the movie studios, but this is another audience, another way in which this movie has reached out to people. And in this image too, you can see this one eye. So again, we have this Cyclops, this Hal, this one eye, all these circles, the Earth, the planets, even the pods, very circular, the spaceships, a lot of circular and spherical imagery. So, and like I said, it really has transcended the film genre, or the genre of sci-fi. I mean, it's really a work of art. It's like a sculpture or a painting or something. It just happens to be in the film medium, but that's almost irrelevant. The fact is that it is a piece of art. And we're going to look at it, and it is a movie too, but it may not follow the exact same format that we've been talking about, although most of those elements are in there. It's really an interesting, way that it was put together. We don't really have a central hero in the traditional sense, but if you look at the hero as being the human race, all humans, in general, throughout time, that is who is taking the journey. We are that which we were before we became humans, and that which we are going to be as we evolve, change into this next version of humanity, if that really is the case. So these humans have 4 representatives throughout the movie, and chronologically we see this proto-human. His name is Moonwatcher. We know this from the novel. At the beginning, he's the one who first sees the monolith and touches it, and he also gets the lesson, the inspiration, the imagery, the knowledge to use a tool as a weapon and use that weapon to kill to eat to survive. So a very, very important threshold that he has to go through and transition. And then we have Dr. Haywood Floyd. He is the one who goes in the shuttle to the space station, and then in the shuttle to the moon. And then once on the moon, he takes another shuttle to the archaeological dig where they have dug up this monolith on the moon. And so we see his development through that. He's kind of us now. And then after this monolith is found on the moon and it's sending a signal, a radio signal out to Jupiter, well then, okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Jupiter. And we have David Bowman as the commander of the Discovery on its way to Jupiter to find out maybe where this signal is going to and what might be on the other end of it. And then ultimately at the end, we have this baby. We have this ready-to-be-born baby, fetus, the star child, looking out, looking beyond. This will be the next one. If the earlier one was the proto-human and we are the humans now, we have this next version, this next vision of humanity and the human race. And because this baby's about to be born, perhaps, there's actually been things born throughout, the knowledge and the growth and the evolution. So birthdays get played a lot. It's a familiar Stanley Kubrick theme. There's a lot of birthdays or mentions of birthdays in his movies, and this is no exception. We have the dawn of man. There's a birth on the space station. Floyd calls his daughter, and wishes her a happy birthday because he's traveling. And David Bowman's crewmate on the Discovery, Frank Poole, he has an actual birthday and gets a message from his parents. And even Hal has a birthday, or at least he talks about his birthday when David Bowman is disconnecting him. He talks about the date in which he became fully operational, which I guess is a computer version of what a birthday is. And speaking of Hal, he really is our enemy. There are confrontations at the beginning, but Hal is really the opponent in a very literal sense. He's the enemy that has to be defeated. And HAL is actually an acronym for heuristic algorithm. Now, an algorithm is a computer process, a code where it figures out, like, say on Amazon, when it looks at your search history and recommends movies for you. That's an algorithm, a computer code, a computer process that figures things out, takes in information, and then spits out a solution, perhaps, to something. And then heuristic is a word that lends itself towards self-learning. So here's this computer that runs this process to solve problems, but it also has this self-learning capacity, very human-like. And we'll see that some suggest that he's even the most human character in the movie. He, in contrast to the humans who are very superficial. Look at the dialogue and the conversation. It's very just on the surface. Oh, how are you doing? Oh, well, good to see you. Well, I'm fine. Well, how are you? Oh, well, how's the wife and kids? Oh, well, I'm okay. Well, these sandwiches taste good. Well, we're going to the moon. Well, I like, there's not much depth, not much real passion or anything. They're almost robot-like. So we have Hal now, who, because he has some of this secret information that the other crew members don't, it drives him crazy. He has things like pride. He boasts about his intellect and his infallibility, that he can't make mistakes. He is very interested in the mission, and he has the greatest hopes for it. And he gets paranoid when he thinks the mission might be in jeopardy, and he resorts to killing the humans because they might be getting in the way. So, in a large sense, Hal is very human, or at least humans in our present state, that we act like that. And just as an aside, trivial information here, if you take the three letters HAL and you add what the next letter alphabetically, sequentially, would be to HAL. The next one after H is I, after A we have B, and after L we have M, and that spells IBM. Coincidence? I don't know, but kind of interesting to take a look at. Okay, so that's Hal, and that's our hero, the human race, in all its forms, past, present, and future. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to talk about eating. You have to eat to live. And at the beginning, we see these proto-humans competing for food. They are collector-gatherers at the time. There's no hunting or agriculture or anything like that, no farming. And these little tapirs, I think they're called, kind of warthogs. I'm not really sure what else they would be other than tapirs. I guess that's just what they are. They're competing, so they're plucking berries off the same bush. The food is very scarce. And they shoo one another away, like that's about the best they can do. So it's competitive. There isn't much food, and that's all we have to eat. Except for the fact that these proto-humans are also food to stronger predators like this cheetah. So they are food. So they're competing for food, and now they are food. So really pretty low on the pecking order at this point. And then what happens is the monolith shows up for the first time. There's a planetary alignment. And this very unusual object, this very thin and flat and sharp angled monolith that, in contrast to the rocks and everything in the surrounding environment, it clearly doesn't belong, or at least it isn't a natural thing. So when it appears, it's, oh my gosh, this thing is special and never seen anything like it before, and they want to get close to it and want to touch it. Very significant point that this comes in to the consciousness. And what happens is this Moonwatcher gets the information, gets the inspiration, the lesson, the intuitive realization, in this case, about technology that got transferred. And this technology is weaponry, using a tool as a weapon to kill. Didn't get the wheel, didn't get fire, got the weapon to kill. That's the information. That was the first lesson that our pre-human predecessors got. And in this case, we see this great scene where Moonwatcher picks up a bone and he remembers the monolith, puts it together in his head, starts tapping the bones of the skeleton of an old tapir, finally to where he's just smashing and destroying the skull of the thing and intercut with a tapir falling to the ground. So we know what happens. They learn how to kill to eat. And they are not scrounging around the berry bush. They are eating, well, it's raw, but they're eating meat. So literally, they killed the competition. They were competing with these tapirs for food. Now they killed them, and they are eating them as food. So huge evolutionary jump as a result of the encounter with this monolith. Now, back to death. Not only did they kill for food, we find out at the water hole, there's a earlier scene where our tribe gets scared off by a more powerful tribe, competing over this really small, muddy water hole, but you need water to drink to survive. So it's still on this level of survival. But as they have been eating meat now for a while, you can see they're bulkier, they're standing more upright. They have the knowledge and the skill to use this tool, this weapon, and if they can kill a tapir over berries and then eat them, well, it's only another step to realize that, okay, well, then I can kill one of our kind over competition for scarce resources. In this case, it's water. Now, you need, like I said, you need water to survive. So the killing is still linked with survival. And this may be really showing what the first war, or at least fratricide, killing your own kind, to take place in our history. So we have death and killing again. And after this scene where Moonwatcher kills and the other guys, kill this other proto-human, he stands up and he just, it's like really coming into his own, and he knows something has happened. Maybe can't explain it or really understand it in any way. And he just hurls this bone high up in the air and it tumbles around. And what we have is what's known as, and has been called, the greatest jump cut in all of movie history. Jump cut meaning that, either space or time has been transcended in that instant of the cut. It's also a match cut because, as you can see in these two images, it really lines up. So it matches from the bone being thrown up by the proto-human. It matches this satellite, which is actually an orbiting missile platform with nuclear weapons pointing down at Earth. So we have this weapon to that weapon. So in a way, you can look on the surface and say, geez, wow, we've gone from a bone to nuclear weapons in space. Look how much we've changed. Or you could look at it like, wow, with that bone, we killed another one of our kind. And, well, with that satellite, we're planning on, at least threatening, to kill others of our kind. So we haven't maybe come that far unless this jump cut. Yes, technology and machinery has vastly improved and changed. But has the human consciousness, have we really evolved? Are we still fighting for survival? Are we still killing each other over scarce resources? Or maybe not, but we're still killing each other over territory, ideology, or any other ridiculous reason we have to conduct war. But we're still there. So maybe that's what Kubrick was getting at. 2 million years later, we're not that much more advanced. Maybe we're ready for another shift in our evolution, another change in our development as a race. So now we're up in space, and we see this beautiful space station. It's rotating like the Earth to produce artificial gravity. And the shuttle comes up to it to enter this thin slot of the ship bay. And in order to do it, not only does it have to line up in position, but it also has to rotate itself on its own axis. So we have the Blue Danube music playing, which is a waltz, and we have this dance that the shuttle and the space station are in harmony. They are in sync. They are turning together, and then the shuttle is able to enter the shuttle bay of the space station. And this may be similar, a metaphor for the physical act of reproduction, copulation with the male and the female. So we have this symbolism going on here. It'll make more sense as we go along. Now, once we're on the space station with Dr. Floyd, what does he do? Well, he meets a friend for lunch. Here we have this eating theme again. Okay, they're not killing, they're not eating meat, they're not plucking berries, they're at a restaurant. So we've evolved, we've changed, we've grown to where now we have this technology, and you can have lunch with a friend in space on the space station. Okay? He also makes a phone call in the picture phone booth next to him at the very beginning, but talking about eating. And back to reproduction, after we're done eating, Floyd gets on the shuttle, the lunar shuttle, to get to the moon, to get to Clavius. And we can see it transit to the moon, and it's this little sphere. It's almost like a tiny planet, maybe, compared to the sun and the moon that are also in this image. And with the sun, long been held as a male or fatherly symbol, and the moon so much a lunar, not lunar, but female, the feminine aspect with the moon, the marriage of the sun and the moon, the masculine and the feminine, this grand, harmony, this synthesis. And as this little space shuttle, this lunar transit goes towards the moon, we can see maybe a parallel that this could symbolize an egg, an unfertilized egg, making its journey through the female body during the monthly cycle, which is about the same, almost exactly the same amount of time as a lunar cycle. So we have this going on in the reproductive aspect of human evolution. And of course, while he's on the shuttle to the moon, what does he do? He eats. Okay, so Floyd gets more food on the shuttle. And we can see here now how the food is just a representation with this image. It's not even a photograph. It's a cartoon image of some peas and some corn, maybe a fish. Don't know what it's made out of. It may have real food in it. It may not. But it has a picture to tell you what it's supposed to be and what it's supposed to taste like. Not even sure what it tastes like. But it's not even real food. So we have this really artificial, very removed from nature sense of eating at this point. And then the shuttle lands on the moon at Clavius. And after it does, it is brought down inside the bay. So in the airlock, so space doesn't come in and they can get out of the ship and nobody dies. Very necessary. But again, this reproductive imagery, this metaphor for a fertilized egg nestling in the wall of the uterus to really continue and begin this process of life, gestation, turning into a baby from this fertilized egg. So we have this imagery going on, pointing to reproduction again. Now, once Floyd gets to the moon, he gives his presentation, and then they get on another shuttle, a moon bus, to go to the dig where they found the monolith on the moon. And what do? They eat, of course. Why not? A lot of the eating, you have to eat to live. And this artificiality of the food, they make some comment that, the food's getting better all the time. They're even digging through the canister looking for sandwiches. And, well, what's this one? Oh, well, I guess this one's turkey. Oh, well, this one's chicken. Like, they have to look at the label to find out what it is. And so the sandwiches aren't even real in that respect. So it's even further removed from the natural state. These humans are, and they're eating now. Now, when they get to the moon, we see the monolith again. This is the second appearance. And like the proto-humans, Floyd also approaches the monolith, and he wants to touch it. Very different in the sense that this is on the moon, and he's in a spacesuit, and he's touching it with a glove, but also in another way not that far apart from the way the proto-humans got involved with this monolith when they found it. Definitely something otherworldly, something that doesn't naturally belong there, something that inspires awe and mystery. And in 2001, when they're on the moon looking at this thing, humans have gotten to the point that instead of just revering or being mystified and awed by it, they do what comes naturally, and that means get a group picture taken next to it, and they do. So that's the monolith on the moon, second time it encounters humans. Now back to reproduction, we have the spaceship Discovery. It's on its way to the moon, or to Jupiter, rather, because when the monolith was found on the moon, it sent out this signal, this radio signal going directly towards Jupiter, and that's why they built this ship, to follow that signal to see maybe where that signal is going and who or what may be on the other end of it. So they're out there, Discovery, even the name of the ship. So seeking life, looking to penetrate the depths to find this life source, and very much looks like a sperm cell. So that's the reproductive imagery. Again, a little out of order. We should maybe have the sperm before the fertilized egg, at least chronologically in the story they're in the right place. But again, the imagery all leading towards this reproductive process. Now, when we first get to Discovery and we meet the two people that are commanding this ship, what are they doing? They're eating. Of course. Why wouldn't they be eating? But at this point, you can see that it's not, they're not sucking something up out of a straw. They're not just eating a sandwich. They're actually eating like grown-ups in a little, sort of. They have this tray that kind of looks like a plate and a cup for the drink. And they're using some sort of a spork, spoon fork type thing to eat it with, but that the food isn't even food. It's even more removed. It doesn't even have a picture that says what it's supposed to look like. It's just colored paste. Who knows what it tastes like? Interesting. You can see that he has an iPad. I guess Kubrick figured out that we would have tablets 40 years before we actually did these video tablets. And it was really interesting to see. What a visionary, huh? Okay, so continuing on the Discovery mission, when Frank Poole, the other crew member of the Discovery, goes out to work on the antenna, Hal activates the pod to snip his airline with the claws and kills him. This is when Hal really goes nuts. He knows that they are planning on disconnecting him. He's very paranoid. He's very concerned about the mission and thinks that the human involvement may jeopardize the mission, and he can't have that because he's so proud of himself and his part in the mission. So he decides to kill off the crew members one by one, and the first one is Frank. And in this picture, we see inside the pod is Dave Bowman, and he's going after him to retrieve Of course, he's dead, but he goes after to him and retrieve him. So right after this murder, we have this real compassionate act, and at this point, he becomes more humanized. We see that the humans are really more human than maybe we had noticed, or at least been shown before. So you have this compassion to go along with this murder in deep space. Very interesting, very human thing to do, to go back and get the body and bring it home. And Hal continues to kill. There are 3 other crew members on the Discovery. They're in hibernation, and then Hal terminates their life functions while they're asleep. So more killing by Hal. He tries to kill Dave, but Dave finds a way around it. And when he does, David Bowman gets back inside the ship, and he moves to disconnect the higher functions of Hal's memory banks. And in this sense, he's effectively killing the computer. Disconnection, I guess, for a computer would be like death, or at the very least, a frontal lobotomy. So we have this kind of poignant in a way, although we're not too upset to see Hal get disconnected. There's still a poignancy in it. Very tender scene, as harsh as the whole situation is. Very interesting. So more death, more conscious killing. And then later on, as Bowman leaves the Discovery again, and he goes off through this Stargate, he ages in space. Time and space travel operate a lot differently than they do. There's a lot of theories behind this. But we see him, and he's at his final place. Apparently it's a habitat from these alien creatures, all set up in this Louis XIV furniture. Interesting why that was a choice. We see this in this room that he lands in, and it's this old furniture, and not really sure why that is, but my guess is that this would have been sort of the height of art and furniture and human development and living before the Industrial Revolution. So it's the peak of one area, and then this new era comes in with the Industrial Revolution, which leads towards technology, computers, artificial intelligence, and then the problems that were encountered in this movie. And today, maybe problems that we need to really think about with artificial intelligence and our reliance on computers. Are we becoming less human? Are these computers taking over some of these roles and jobs, thinking and feeling for us? Interesting to think about. But in this scene, we see that eating has also evolved. Look at what he's eating. It looks like real food. It looks like actual food. And he's got, a nice place setting with silver and silverware and fine china, even a crystal glass that he's able to drink out of. The same glass that he actually knocks over. And maybe this is a nod to human fallibility, that no matter how evolved with ourselves and our technology and even how properly we can eat a meal, we still make mistakes and we can still knock the glass over and break it. So that's Dave when he's at the end, and he is really at the end because he lives out the rest of his life there and seemingly dies of old age in this bedroom that's set up. And at this point, the monolith reappears. This is the third time. Now, there is a time where the monolith briefly appears during a planetary alignment right before Bowman goes into the Stargate. But this is really the third time that now the monolith appears. And again, we see this reaching out with the hand, wanting to touch it. This mystery, what's beyond? What's the next thing? Let's climb higher, go further, be better, go beyond. That's human nature. And he reaches out towards this thing right at the moment when he dies. He is transformed into this new being, this star child that he's reborn to, bringing this next evolution to the universe, to mankind. And that's what we're left with at the end, this star child, this hope, this new beginning for the human race and our development. And that's one of the things I want you to think about in the forum this week. I want you to think about what would the next level of evolution be? Physiologically, what would it be like? Would we eat like we used to eat? Would we have to kill animals? I mean, a lot of people nowadays don't think we really have to kill animals to eat. Of course, you have to kill plants and do all that. And a great many of us feel like we don't have to kill each other. That hopefully will be part of our next evolutionary stage if we don't get to it first in this one. But that's the hope. So it starts out, this movie, millions of years ago, before we were humans, and it ends up when maybe we're going to reach this next stage of our development, and that is the star child. So there we have a brief, if you want to call it brief, look into 2001. There are so many more symbolic images and themes to look at, but these are the big ones that I picked out, having to do with reproduction, with eating for survival, and with death and killing, the big things in human life. So 2001, and thank you for a really interesting class. I hope it's been interesting for you. It's been really great for me to put it together. And as always, I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you.